right, we are going live. We are going live. Almost an hour late. Holy cow. Definitely not what was expected, but hey, I absolutely got myself distracted tonight in the best way possible by being social. Woohoo! That doesn't happen all that often. I was at a game night. That's one of the things I said ahead of time that would make me later than usual. I did not realize I was going to be this late. I blame it all on Catan and my own stupidity for playing Settlers of Catan. Hey, look, Star Drop Mellow is here. Woohoo! Great to see you here. And I also see that there was the conversations in the chat while people were waiting and then eventually gave up on me. I absolutely understand. I absolutely understand. No hard feelings whatsoever. But glad to know that the audio is coming through just a-okay. And today we had Knights of Guinevere drop. Woohoo! Been waiting on this one for a while. And let me have a quick look at how it's doing. It's got over 2 million views in the last 6 hours. Very respectable, very respectable. My big question, as far as its impact goes going forward, is can it do Murder Drone's numbers? That's the big question going forward as far as its impact goes, which was one of the topics of my latest video, looking at the finances that brought Knights of Guinevere into being. That side of the creative process, where all the money is at. As far as the story goes, we're going to get into that tonight. And Starter Mel says, "Really, Hand of Heaven." Okay, all right. Oh yeah, I remember that. Plus, the channel now has 16.3 million subs. Yeah, say Glitch is still doing very well. And Hannah masquerading as Stardrop. Great to have you here. Watching the show, I enjoy it. Just don't know how I feel about it yet. And you know what? That is very understandable. TV account, you're not late. I'm the one that's late. We literally just got started. I can understand if you don't know how you feel about it. I kind of feel the same way. I don't really know yet how I should feel about it. And I think one of the reasons why that is because none of the characters are exactly likable except for Guinevere. But Guinevere has only been in the show very briefly and in a very psychedelic cyberpunk way where you're not exactly sure how present she is. And so, as a result of that, by far one of the most intriguing and the most sympathetic character is really on the periphery. Now, I do like Frankie. I thought that her character was fun and everything, but I can also see that Frankie will rub some people the wrong way. It's kind of hard to mesh uber competent smuggler and mechanic with super naive and ditzy. You can do it. You can do it. I'll be interested to see how this gets pulled off in the long run, if it is, but it's not exactly a mix that you would normally see with a character. The fact that Frankie opened the bottle with his eyes was crazy. Yeah, no, Frankie putting the bottle in her eye and then just like winking and popping that on out. I was just like, wow, wasn't expecting to see that. Han says, Frankie grew on me quickly. I thought she was chill. No, she is absolutely chill. And I felt like I felt really bad for her when it was clear that Addie was basically riding off of Frankie's talent while not giving Frankie a chance. The whole situation with the crownies and everything like that, it's interesting. We didn't get a whole lot of information. So, you know what? Let's just start diving real quick into what happened this episode and then my insights into it. And that's just pretty much going to be the live stream for tonight, is talking about this show and just breaking it down, collecting our thoughts and our feelings of it. And so, yeah, well, the setting, Park Planet. We've got this crazy Disney-esque theme park that's just floating over this water world, maybe. So far, we've just seen it floating over the ocean. And we get the opening of Guinevere trying to escape from knockoff Walt Disney and apparently his little daughter. And so it establishes that there's a history of Guinevere trying to escape. We jump way forward into the future where the little girl's now an ailing old woman ready to croak and is still trying to hold on to Guinevere for everything that she's got. Frankie and Addie are just trying to survive in the environment that this theme park world has created. We got to see the blue lung come into play with just how many people are sick. There's obviously a divide between the haves and the have-nots. And ultimately, the people who are perceived as the haves are also in a really bad situation, where the so-called crownies, the people who get to work directly for the company and get to be under the company umbrella, supposedly with all the pay and benefits, we get to see through Addie that it's really not a glamorous lifestyle at all. They get worked like slaves and are not treated fairly at all, not properly compensated. And so it's a bad situation all around. This changes when Frankie pulls up an old Guinevere model, the Guinevere model that apparently jumped ship quite literally and tried to escape the theme park. And we see that Addie and Frankie have a history with Guinevere that way back in the day when they were just kids, they were trying to get a toy from the claw machine and ended up having an experience with Guinevere. And as we learn also in this episode is that the Guinevere system as a whole allows for people to have specialized interactions with Guinevere. And if they find any other Guinevere on this theme park or really anywhere else, that Guinevere will immediately recognize them and reestablish that relationship with them, which is really cool. And Frankie has this dream of, again, meeting Gwen, getting it, and just kind of picking up where that magical mystical moment dropped off. So that's why she really wants to hold on to this Guinevere, have the chance to reconnect, and then, of course, rebuild it. If she rebuilds it, she might be able to show off her amazing skill and then get hired on as a crownie and then work alongside Addie, and then maybe their lives will all get better. Yay! Except that's not what's going to happen because her boss intends to sell this Guinevere. He says for scraps, though there's a line later on that's like a wink and a nod to, I know people who will do horrible things with dolls. Wink, wink. This is not a radar channel, so I shall not go any further than that. So Frankie and Addie are trying to save Guinevere from being scrapped or sold off in a really horrible situation, and basically get their lives back on track, especially after Addie's gotten fired. And their boss and Frankie's boss is like, "Hey, you know what? I'll give you a chance. I'm not going to cut you up into little pieces like I really, really want to, because I got to show off to the boys that I'm in charge. But you will still give her on over to me. So go fix her on up. Go into the lab. See what you can do. And when you survive, if you survive, you bring her back to me. And then we will make sure that payment is proper, is due." So the girls go on into the lab, and the lab is full of just horrors. And one of the horrors that they run into is this giant knight thing that came out of a Soulsborne game. If you've played the Shadowlands extension for Elden Ring, It basically is one of the giant inferno golems that goes around burning people, is effectively what it looks like. And the Guinevere robot starts coming a little bit online, even gives them a warning, and at one point goes up against this giant knight. And the girls don't see what happened. We get to see a whole lot of blood and carnage splattering everywhere, and the knight has been defeated. Both Addie and Frankie, however, in this encounter, which just rocks and destroys the lab, they are wounded and exhausted. And it ends in a very trippy cyberpunk way where they see Guinevere as she is supposedly supposed to be. And we get left off there. It's a very bold choice for an opening episode, because normally an opening episode is meant to establish not just the characters, but establish what is the plot going to be and what is this world like. And we get enough information to understand how horrible this cyberpunk-esque world is. We get to know the characters well enough, and we have the basic outline of a plot. Bring Guinevere back to life so that way they can sell her. And there you have it. Okay, so we have the important stuff. We've gotten to know the characters, we've gotten to know the world, we've gotten to know the plot. But it's very, very clear as well in this episode that you can't trust some of the psychedelic visions or some of the memories. These characters are not necessarily trustworthy either. We don't know to the extent of how horrible this world is. And it's also very clear that the girls do not intend to follow through on their deal. And also Addie and Frankie are both kind of after their own separate goals. So what we know of the plot is going to go out the window pretty fast. We also know that we do not know enough about this world to even begin to understand what the heck is going on. And though we've gotten to know the characters, that again, they are of an unreliable sort. And so therefore it's hard to really know what's going to happen next. And as I said earlier, it's also a little bit hard to identify with them. So I can understand, again, if a lot of people will come to this show and walk away from the first episode feeling maybe a little bit lost, wowed, but lost. And yeah, I'll admit, I'm still trying to figure out for myself, where exactly do I stand with this particular episode. I'm excited to see what happens next. I am very interested in learning Guinevere's story. And so I'm on board. But is that enough to hold people on, to hold people over for the next 4 to 6 months before we potentially get the next episode? Who knows? So I'm going to take a drink of water. Tyler says, I bet that Frankie will betray her boss and they will be on the run. Oh yeah. That's very, very definitely going to happen. She's not going to hand over Guinevere to her boss, especially, again, with the implications of what her boss wants to do with Guinevere. And, of course, Frankie wants to reconnect with Guinevere. So, yeah. There you have it. There's the very, very basic rundown of the plot that we have. So let's see here. Where shall we begin? I'm going to put some options here into the chat for you all. I'm going to throw some colors at you: mauve, teal, and salmon. What do you like besides the salmon? So, should we start with the world building? Should we start off with should we start off with the character relationships? Should we start off there? Or should we deal with timeline? Or do we want to talk about the allegory, aka This is Dana going against Disney. So of these options right here, which ones should we begin discussing? TV counts as character relationships. It's a good choice because character relationships really push the characters forward, help us to better understand who they are. I'm Omega. Do you think there's going to be more of those robots in the daughter's court? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. We're going to get to so many creepy, weird robots. I'm pretty certain of that after this episode. And I'm excited because we are probably going to get the same variety of insanity with these robots as we did with the demons as the demons and witches from the Owl House. In fact, there is a lot of, you can see a lot of the Owl House in this show. Almost the same art style, a lot of the same humor, a lot of the same just grunge feel to it is all there. So Hannah says, character relationship. I struggle with that. World building is easy for me. I prefer soft world building. So I'll do the character relationships. All right. So we got 2 votes for character relationships, and with 4 people currently watching, I'd say that is, that's probably going to be our, our choice, our route. All right. So let's start talking about the character relationships. Relationships are important to understanding characters because characters, like people, should show different sides of themselves when addressing and talking to different people. One of the ways in which we accidentally create very bland characters is when we make them act the same way to each and every single person that they interact with. And even in a lot of shonen stories where you have the very stalwart, bland protagonist who just kind of is supposed to deal the same way with everyone, you realize that even those characters sometimes show a different side to themselves depending on who they're talking to. So when we come, like, let's start with Frankie. The relationships that we can observe with Frankie. Frankie, obviously, with Addie is far softer, far kinder, is always saying things that are on the more positive side or doing things that are on the more positive side for Addie, showing just how much Frankie looks up to her and how much she cherishes her time with her and the relationship that they share. And that also comes across in how she, as you can see here on the screen, how she hacks the system to get parts for Addie, how she's been doing chores around the house for Addie, and all these things. And while that seems like that's just pretty much par for the course when it comes to Frankie, because Frankie is definitely a more kind, upfront individual, Frankie does have a different relationship with her boss. While she is very cordial with her boss, and they seem to have a somewhat jokey relationship, she does treat her boss with deference. But at the same time, she also feels like she can stand up to her boss, which is something that she doesn't do against Addie. Even when there are moments where Addie really actually probably should get a real talking to. And so how might we then characterize the relationships that we actually then do see Addie Frankie have? Frankie treats Addie with almost too much deference. That she looks up to her friend a whole lot. She adores her, which is all really nice, but we kind of get a hint at one point where Addie's very clearly taking Frankie's knowledge without letting her know that that's what's happening, that Frankie's inspiring her, that Frankie is taken advantage of by Addie in this relationship because she's just way too positive, way too giving towards her best friend and roommate. Towards her boss, she gets along very well with her boss. She can be respectful, jokey, but she will also stand up to him, especially when it comes to something that matters the most to her, which is Guinevere. She has this awestruck relationship to this fictional character because of an interaction that she had with Gwen that was just so real to her that she wants it back. Her relationship with Guinevere is truly something mystical. And it's kind of like someone looking for a fairy, looking for a unicorn. And so the relationship between Frankie and Guinevere, even though we see that she fixed Guinevere's hand back in the past, and that was something that was very nice and dear to her to Guinevere, their relationship, however, is a very shallow one, built more on the desires that she wishes for that relationship rather than what that relationship is. A good way of describing it would actually be more along the lines of a crush. As embarrassing as it is sometimes to think about crushes that we might have had on people or that we might currently have, you tend to project what you hope the other person will be like and what you want your interactions to be like onto that person and onto all of those moments rather than accepting the reality of the situation, which is often different from what you actually find yourself in, especially when it comes to crushes. And then also, Frankie has relationships with hallucinations. Either Frankie is not all there in the head, or this is a coping mechanism for the horrible life that Frankie has been forced to live, where she speaks to the super cute plushies who, in her mind, absolutely come to life. So there with Frankie, we get to see that gushing deference and overly friendliness, probably way too giving towards Addie, cordialness, some respect, but also a bit of defiance towards her boss, a little bit of a jokey relationship there, absolute awe and wonder for Guinevere, which does not translate to an in-depth or even a healthy relationship. It's just what she wishes to have with that particular relationship. And then, of course, her hallucinations, which, again, comes back around to what I said, these characters are not necessarily trustworthy. Frankie seems to be almost honest to a fault. Not necessarily honest to a fault. That would then mean she's kind of a goody two-shoes, which she isn't. But she's very upfront. She doesn't hide what she's thinking or feeling. But Frankie is very clearly lost some marbles. And because part of the story relies on memories, we have to begin to question what's really going on here in the story, and especially with Addie. ISO is here. Woohoo! Hello! I am in the woods. Awesome. You are in the woods. Hopefully you're not lost in the woods, because if you are lost in the woods and you're taking the time to say hello to us, while I am very honored about that, you need to make sure that you get help immediately. All right. So that's it. That's it for Frankie. We then have Addie. Addie's an interesting one, because we get this very, very rough exterior where she's very rude to other people. She seems just too blunt, too exhausted, and that very easily seems as though she's kind of just then a one-dimensional character. Where depth comes to Addie's, where there's some depth in the relationships that Addie has, is actually with Frankie, because again we see that Addie does take advantage of Frankie to a certain degree, which is not healthy. And given the environment that she's in, it's honestly dog eat dog. Addie, I think, better understands the reality of her situation than Frankie does. That becomes pretty clear later on. And it's not that she's going to try to become one of those people at the top eating all the other dogs, but she's just trying to carve out some semblance of happiness and stability in a really rotten world. And so as a result, she will be rude to people who are rude to her. She'll be kind to people if they're kind back to her, and she will take advantage where she feels it is necessary. Isa says, I missed the Knights of Guinevere premiere. Yeah, I missed the audio for it because I was in the company car on the way back, and everyone's having discussions about hires and politics and technology, and I'm over there in the very back of the van, like I'm here with an indie animation. Mm-hmm. Never mind the grown man in the back of the car watching the cartoon. I says, I'm trying to hunt, but after a week, it's a camping trip. I mean, yeah. Well, shouldn't all good hunting trips also be excellent camping trips? Hannah says she's having a bad day. LOL. Oh yeah, no, Addie's having a very bad day. Tian says, I was struggling with the premiere because of home problems. I'm sorry to hear that. TV count. Hope you managed to get to see it in some with some peace and quiet later. And the same to everyone else who missed it or had something come up that made it difficult to watch it. Yeah, I understand. It's absolutely frustrating. So again, coming back then to Addie, we get again just this very interesting relationship between her and Frankie, because she is friends with Frankie. She's not trying to take advantage of Frankie. But again, it's a dog-eat-dog world. She's doing what she must in order to survive. And so she does, again, what she feels is right, which really isn't. And we get to see more of that nuance come out when Frankie stands up to her boss and Addie steps on in and tries to have a reasonable exchange with him. It's very, very fascinating because I didn't get any hint of like hidden malice or of manipulation. It's a situation where she realizes this is bad, so the best thing to do is to just be honest, transactional. And so it means that Addie's a very logical person within the rules and precepts of this particular world. And so that's it. We don't really get to see a whole lot of Addie's other relationships other than with the guy that she went to school with. We get to see her being really angry. Then there's the guy who spits on her shoe, gets really angry. And that does actually disservice for Addie's character because all we get to see is just a lot of anger. Just a lot of anger. And while I understand that Dana, she even said that the story came from a place of anger, this could be very detrimental to Addie's character development. If all that we really just get to see is just her angry, and the only times where she isn't angry is where she's either only with Frankie or where she has to be more cordial, more respectful, more reasonable because the situation demands it, that firmly establishes her survivalist mentality, but it doesn't really help us to get to know her, who she is, and that's difficult. That's one of the reasons why I think I gravitated more towards Frankie rather than to Addie, even though we actually get a lot of Addie. It's not just the Frankie show, and so that's again something to consider when it comes to your characters. Think about giving them far more relationships, because it's in the relationships where we get to really see who these characters are, how they act in different situations, how they act with different people. Because if you just see one side, one facet of a character, that might be very interesting and insightful, but it's not the complete picture. And you want to see the complete picture of a character because that better helps you to empathize with them. It helps you to recognize their journey, to root for them as their story goes on, and to applaud their progress and to mourn any regression that their arc takes them through. And that is something that is missing with Addie in this episode. All right, so you're off. I hope that you have a fantastic night. Thank you for popping in for what little time you could. And yes, please, Dana, develop the characters. Yes, this is what I mean. Where I said a little while back that this is going to be Dana showing off what she can and can't do on her first real rodeo on her own, without major Disney interference. Can she tell an amazing story, or is she an ideas person? Because she's got some fantastic ideas. But what can she do when it comes to actually developing characters in the long run? When I look back at the Owl House, Luz, for the most part, is excellent character development, though towards the end of the show, she kind of got dropped off a bit. King probably has the best character development out of any character, Hunter being second. Whereas Gus only got sporadic character development. Willow basically reached the zenith of her character development midway through season 1, which is kind of a yikes. And Ida got forgotten after the first quarter of season 2. Yes, she was still around, but she got almost no character development after meeting Rain. And here is something that I really, truly want to emphasize. We can come to know who our characters are through the relationships that they have. Romantic, familial, platonic, villainous, the whole shebang. However, if you end your character's progression in the story with they fell in love and they got together with the person that they love, you have done your character, your story, and your audience and yourself a large disservice. And that was something that Dana unfortunately did with Ida, because the big thing was Ida just has to get back together with Rain. We now know everything about Ida. Who? No, we don't. In fact, there were so many fantastic loose threads that needed to be pulled and tied together to show us who Ida was entirely and how far she's come. And Dana dropped the ball on that. She unfortunately did. Yes, I know Disney interfered with her show, axed the seasons that she was supposed to have gotten. I get that. But Ida, King, and Luz were meant to be the heart of the show from the very beginning into the very end. And when you drop Ida, 1/3 of the show's heart, that really, really hurts the story. So what I'm hoping is that as we go through the rest of Knights of Guinevere, because it seems as though our trio of Frankie, Addie, and Gwen are supposed to be the heart of this show, Dana needs to demonstrate, she needs to prove to us that she can indeed develop these 3 core characters and not just beyond someone's in a relationship or someone's got feelings. They're together now. Those are mile markers, not the whole story, not the whole in-depth package of who this character is meant to be. So we'll have to see going forward. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode in terms of like really in-depth relationships. Yeah, there's Frankie's boss, but Frankie's boss he's a very straightforward guy, very two-dimensional. He's the drunk runner. He pulls up all the crap that's been thrown over the side of the floating park island. He then sells the scraps to unscrupulous characters. I feel like there's a really good tongue twister in there somewhere. Sell the scraps to unscrupulous characters. Sell the scraps to unscrupulous characters. Yeah, it's not quite there. It's not quite there yet. Unscrupulous scraps, unscrupulous scraps, unscrupulous scraps. Nah, that's not a good tongue twister either. Anyways, he's an unscrupulous junk guy selling scraps to unscrupulous people. That's basically him. And all the other characters that we've met so far are either just a particular stereotype or archetype that's just meant to be a placeholder as the story moves on. And it's okay to have characters on the periphery that are just meant to be one thing, either one-dimensional or two-dimensional, not very deep. they're just there to help provide color and variety and dialogue as the story progresses. That's absolutely fine. But what we've gotten in this show so far is really only two characters who are somewhat deep, who are unreliable, no other relationships that we can really hold on to. And so again, this asks the audience to really put your trust into these characters, to already buy into their story, to love their story. And again, I don't know how many people will. The fans of the show are going to love it. There's definitely a lot to enjoy. But I think that as of right now, this is a hard sell. Like if you were to ask me to start recommending this show to a whole bunch of other people that I know who would love to see a good cartoon series, there's actually a fair number of them that I could not recommend this to, because I know that they would be turned off by the story as it currently stands. I'll have to wait longer to see how the rest of it pans out before I can say, hey, guess what? You will really like these characters because X, Y, and Z. You will really like the story because of X, Y, and Z. You are going to love the plot twist. So and so on and so forth. Because we're really given rather little as of right now. So there you have it for the relationships. If there's any good, solid writing advice that I can pull out from what I have seen and what I kind of worry about with the show is this. Think about the people that your characters interact with. What is that like? Why is it like that way? And show us more about who they are through those relationships. If I were to put that into practice with one of my own stories, in the Legend of the Ten Lords saga, you got one of the main characters, Ben. So Ben has got some friends at school, and then he's got a group of friends over on Halley Cruise when he crosses over each night to this other world. At school, you've got his friend Moses, who's just a really bad practical jokester. And basically Ben's just like, you know what? I humor you, and you're fun to humor, which is why I keep you around as a friend. And he's then got his friend Sam, who he gets along with. They're respectful, but really he's friends with Sam because he's friends with Sam's girlfriends. And so that tells you already a lot about that particular relationship. Okay, so Ben and Sam are actually not going to talk really maybe all that lot because what they share in common is a friend. For one, it's his girlfriend. For the other, it's just his friend. That can get very awkward real fast. So they'll be very brief and respectful to each other. Over on Halley Cruise, there's Steven, who is like, oh, Ben, I'm your best friend. And Ben's like, Steven, you're a really good friend, but you're very obsessed with certain things and with a certain person. And while I really do appreciate you and I find you honestly a real help to me, I do feel a little awkward around you. Then there's Ashley, who he is in awe of, super respectful, kind of very Frankie to Addie-esque. With Nessa, Ben acts more kind of like the older brother. And so you get these different relationships that give you a better idea of how Ben acts around different people. What does he value? What are his standards? And that tells you a lot that tells you a lot in fun, interactive ways, rather than me having to list out his qualities in a very bland Pokemon card kind of way, which is something you want to avoid as a writer. You want people to get to know your characters through their interactions, through their actions, through their dialogue, not in a block of text of you describing them. So, yeah, bear that in mind. Now then, so we've talked about relationships. We've got we've got allegory, we got world building, and we've got timelines. What do you guys want to talk about next? Timelines, allegory, or world building from this show? Let me know there in the chat, and I'm going to take another drink of water. Good stuff. It got hot again over here. I got lucky with a few days of rain where everything cooled down. It was nice. And then today, it got hot and it was humid and woo. So it's still summertime. Make sure you guys are keeping yourselves hydrated. All right. I'm Omega says timeline. And since I'm Omega, let's hear. And TV account says allegory. All right. So we got a toss up between timeline and allegory. Han says, I don't know yet. So with a toss up, I will pull out the coin of decision making, unless there's a tie-breaking vote. The coin of decision making, though you guys cannot see it, is a Legoland coin. There's a dragon on one side and there's a Legoland on the other. I think that allegory should be dragon since it's full of the anger and venom and bile that Dana wishes to hurl at the House of Mouse. And for timeline, we'll do Legoland. So I'm going to flip the coin. Ooh, that made a really nice ring sound. And we landed on dragon. So we will do dragon. Dragon is allegory. Okay, so this is where the fun comes in. This episode is very, very clearly Dana dunking on her experience with Disney. Absolutely, full stop. There you have it. However, there's actually a lot of depth to the potential allegory in this episode. And what I'm going to tell you right now, before I launch into a tirade of all the stuff that I saw in this episode, as far as what pertains to Dana's experience, as far as we know it with Disney, and what we know of other people's experiences with modern Disney, I'm just going to say this. A lot of the best ideas that come into your story often do not come because you planned them out. As you write your story, your characters come to life. As you write your story, your world evolves. And oftentimes in ways that you were not expecting. And there will be times when you're reading through your story that you realize there's a great idea here. I didn't know I wrote that in. I'm a genius. If only my subconscious did this more often, I would be selling the best books. I'd be making the best shows, the best movies. So many of the best ideas are not the ideas we originally start off with, and many times they're also ideas that we didn't realize that we wrote down. So me saying that is basically to preface that I do not believe that Dana went in trying to capture all of the different elements I'm about to talk about in one episode, but rather that as she and her team created, that they realized these are really good things to keep in. Let's do it. So the allegory, Disney sucks. This is all about dealing with the House of Mouse and all the problems that come with it. So let's start off with where this story is taking place. It's taking place on this planet that has been terraformed to allow for parks to exist. And we'll find out from Addie that there's other planets that are being terraformed to make space for yet more parks and industry. Effectively, that entertainment has consumed people's lives. And how often has this happened? I was not say how often, but how true is that for us now? People want to be entertained by stuff. And not just entertained by shows and movies and comics, but like, why is it that people are always constantly watching the news? For instance, a lot of people who are watching the news are so ill-informed. They have no idea what's going on. What they want is they don't want the news. They want to be entertained by talking heads that tell them the stuff that they want to hear. A lot of the news is just regurgitating what they hope that you will like. Same goes for politics. People are not into politics these days for actually trying to find credible solutions to problems that ail families, individuals, communities, and nations. They're in it for that. They're in it for the mudslinging, for the drama, for the scandal. Why do people follow celebrities? It was once upon a time because people really wanted to know about these individuals that they identified with and came to love because they saw them on the silver screen. Nowadays, people are all up in everyone else's business because they are entertained by the gossip, by the drama. It's all about entertainment, 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 entertainment. And if you are not being entertained, well, guess what? You're going to be put to work somewhere in order to continue to fuel the industry of entertainment. It's a very bleak way of looking at the world, but it's one that if you step back and think about it, yeah, that's kind of what's going on. And Disney is at the head of that. Disney, which has built a beautiful parks and a fantastic industry. Like Disney, if you take out all of the awfulness and all of the recent events with Disney, Disney seems really amazing. It's a wonder. It's an awe-inspiring company when you look at its grand history. But the moment that you step back from that glorious veneer and all that fun, there is a lot of garbage underneath. And Dana, while working for Disney, got to be there when a lot of Disney's dirty laundry started getting aired out at the end of the 2010s and beginning of the 2020s. Dana was right there for that. Dana was also over in Los Angeles around the time that a rat colony took over Disneyland during COVID. So seeing this beautiful park, this beautiful theme park world represented as just awfulness and garbage and crud is very much in line with stuff that Dana would have been immediately in contact with, stuff that she would have saw, stuff that she would have heard from other people. The dark, dank underbelly of this glorious entertainment kingdom. So that's why we get to see this place is just represented as absolutely awful and disgusting. Then with Guinevere just being used up again and again and again. Do these people not have any new ideas, any fresh ideas? It's like Disney. When has Disney had a new original idea? They don't come very often anymore. And Disney doesn't bank on originality anymore. Even with Pixar, they acquired because Pixar could bring that originality, and now they demand that Pixar just crank out the same exact stuff again and again and again. So the originality is gone. The magic is fake. It's all rotten underneath. And the people who go to work for Disney, like Frankie and Addie and everyone else, they're just used and abused. And they're given impossible deadlines and tasks. And even if they do succeed, there's a very good chance that they're going to get fired. As far as we know, Addie actually succeeded in what she was supposed to do. There's one thing that I would really like to have seen more. I would like to have seen Addie actually in the workplace, get a better idea of what that was like before firing her. So that was definitely something that this episode should have touched on. But in any case, it's very clear that just like with Disney, these people, just get used and abused by the company. And once they've been used up, they are then tossed heartlessly aside. And so we've got characters and IP drained for all that they're worth until there's no more originality. The magic is all completely gone. People are absolutely abused. People are not paid enough. The park secretly or even openly is a wreck. But everyone just has to deal with it. Entertainment seems to now be the driving force for everything. Resources are plundered in order to keep things going. We recycle the same kind of crud. And even within the bowels of the great labs and the preserves where all of these amazing things are supposed to be brought together and brought to life, it's just junk. It's awfulness. And an interesting, sad fact is that within the vaults of Disney right now, Disney didn't get rid of necessarily most of their archivists, but they basically created a skeleton crew of archivists. Archivists are the people who are meant to catalog the history of the company and to preserve all of the IP and ideas that Disney has created and bought over the years. In many ways, their job is to help keep the soul of Disney alive. But being put onto a skeleton crew, it's impossible for them to actually keep up with the demands of such a huge catalog and history. As a result, Disney is actually rotting where it matters most, where we immediately think, oh, the creativity. Disney is rotting within its own legacy because it can no longer preserve its own legacy. And this is actually intentional by the current leadership over at the House of Mouse. They want the old legacy to rot and to die in order for them to supplant it with what they want to build right now and for their future. So Dana, this is one of those moments where I think that this was more unintentional rather than planned within the story, but Dana has captured the essence of that with what is happening underneath the theme park, with these decrepit labs and with the weirdness that's going on there, where it's just dark, gloomy, all the magic is gone. And when the Sentinel arrives to try to take Guinevere, I mean, all of this technology and history and development and research just gets destroyed in pursuit of preserving one doll, of getting one doll back. And that kind of fits how Disney is just so focused on just one thing that it's led to the detriment of this conglomeration that needs way more attention and care than it's currently getting. So it's rotting from the inside. And there's another element, a little more subtle, in this episode as far as the allegory goes. Hold on a second, guys. I'm going to take a quick drink of water. There we go. There's another subtler element in this episode where the park is absolutely obsessed with preserving the Guinevere property, with the Guinevere image. So much so that they are willing to go to incredible lengths, even just straight up imprisonment or murder, in order to ensure that other people do not get their hands on Guinevere. This is very similar to how Disney has been brutal and even in some cases illegal in their dealings with other people who want to interact with the properties that they own, or even with properties that then go into the public domain. Disney has been absolutely vicious. And so with the way that the company treats Guinevere and how they treat other people who interact with Guinevere is very reminiscent of how Disney treats their fans, their customers, and their competition, which is to say, really horribly. So there you have it. This is a very good allegory of what's going on with Disney. And as the girls are trying to get their hands on a Guinevere and fix her on up, like, hey, we can do something new with her. Disney's like, nah, we own that. We own that. Disney clamps down on every iteration of every idea that they've bought, and Disney uses their own very predatory ironclad contracts to steal people's ideas so that way those people will never have the chance to use them again. And that is represented subtly within this show. So yeah, Dana is definitely airing many, many grievances and more of it, Disney's dirty laundry with this pilot episode. So there you have it. So we've covered the allegory, we've covered character relationships. Next thing that was brought up was that as a suggestion was timeline. Excuse me. So from I'm Omega. So let's start talking timeline in this show. The reason why I bring up timeline, while it might not seem necessarily all that important, it actually is, because we are dealing with some pretty big time skips. We open up with the little girl with knockoff Walt Disney and a mystery. That knockoff Walt Disney has built this beautiful theme park for his daughter to make up for something that, well, we don't need to go into that right now. There's a bit of a wink and a nod that it involves a mother, possibly the girl's mother, his wife. But we're left in the dark about that. It's a mystery. It's a mystery to be solved. It's also a mystery of why the girl is working on Guinevere, why Guinevere is trying to escape. And then we jump ahead into the distant future, very distant future, because the little girl is now a decrepit old woman on her deathbed. So we've jumped ahead many, many years, and we've gotten to see how the dream has become a nightmare. But in between that time, you have when Frankie and Addie met Guinevere and had their experience at the arcade. And that is a memory that is constantly revisited throughout this episode in various ways, from going to the arcade to flashbacks of Guinevere when Frankie kind of hallucinates seeing Guinevere again right before Guinevere turns around to fight the Sentinel. And so we get all of these callbacks to a past that we're also not very well connected with. And what I find fascinating about that is that we effectively get to deal with three different times in this show going forward. We must solve the mystery of the very distant past. We need to reconcile, meaning make sense of and come to terms with the past that Frankie and Addie have with Gwen, which is introduced to us in such a weird psychedelic way that we have to question what on earth actually happened. We don't really know. And then there is the present. And so with these three different timelines, this is actually, I personally really enjoy this, because this is what Brandon Sanderson has done with his Stormlight Archive series, with multiple times being addressed. The extreme ancient past, the personal past of the main characters, and then their present are all in the same story, and all of them are explored. And when you do that, if you do it well, it is a brilliant way of indicating how the world came to be what it is, how these characters that we come to fall in love with and that we're rooting for and following, how they've been shaped by the deeds and choices of other people, that the world that they're living in is not just one that just sucks because it has always sucked, but that it sucks because of what other people have done, and it gives them actually then a chance to show real autonomy by trying to change things because they now understand those things. And that is really, really cool when done well. So I like how we have basically three different timelines in the show that will need to be addressed. If Dana drops any one of those timelines, it will cause problems down the line. So let's hope that she and her team are up for the juggling act, because if they pull it off, it's going to be amazing. If they don't, it's going to be pretty spectacular to watch the downfall. Guy that hates bull is here. Great to have you here, Guy. I watched Knights of Guinevere and I liked it a lot. An engaging pilot indeed. Well, fantastic, and I love that you loved it. There's a lot, so much to talk about with this pilot, and I definitely need to go back and rewatch it yet again and just try to take more of it in. Like even as we're going on with this live stream, there's little details that I'm spotting here and there where I'm like, oh, I missed that before. That's really cool, or that's really ominous, or now something makes a little bit more sense. Excuse me. And so that's the timelines aspect. It's something that I'm pretty certain people are just going to accept as, oh, those are cool flashbacks. They're cool flashbacks. They give us insights into stuff. Yes, they do. Yes, they are. But more so than just flashbacks, if you can properly balance the deeds of the past, very distant and a little bit more personal, with the actions that characters are taking in the story's present, you end up creating this really awesome effect, again, of showing how actions have consequences, how characters then deal with those consequences down the line, and how it actually then elevates the power of their own autonomy as they deal with those issues, as they solve the riddles of the past and make sense of the present in order to determine their future. And that's really, really cool. And that's something that most people who deal with flashbacks don't usually think about, because flashbacks are normally used just to make sense of something that's happening in the present, and then they move on, rather than solving the problems of the past in order to make sense of the present to then make a better future. Stardrop says, hey, sorry for interrupting, but can I get on Discord again? My old account is sadly gone because some problems that I can't explain. All right, so Stardrop Mellow, either on this video when it's done or on any of our other videos, make sure that you leave a comment asking to join our Discord, and I'll make sure that you get the link, because yeah, we already know you, and so you won't have to go again through the interview process. For anyone else who wishes to join our Discord, make sure that you reach out to us. Let us know that you want to come on board. We will extend an interview to you so we get to better know who you are, what stories you're working on, what you wish to contribute to our writing community. So that way, then, yeah, we'll then know how you will best fit in with everyone else. And it also helps us to weed out the trolls. Guy says, I believe it's all a Disney metaphor with the details, with the dystopia. Guinevere hair-shaped as Mickey's ears, the founder, Guinevere being a princess. Amen. Yeah, we were just talking about that, guy, about the massive allegory to Disney. There's so much about all of this that's just very highly reminiscent of Disney. And the more you look around, all the cutesy stuff that's just everywhere, and how everyone's got to deal with Mickey, deal with Guinevere this, Guinevere that, cutesy this, cutesy that. Is very similar to, if you're going to work for the House of Mouse, everything is Mickey this, Mickey that, Disney this, Disney that, princess this, princess that, every time, everywhere, and you can never escape it. And if you are one of the employees, you are expected to just buy into and live the Disney lifestyle. And Star says, so just comment here after the stream. Got it. Thanks. Yep, absolutely. So let's hear, with relationships, allegory, and timelines all covered. The last thing that I really had planned to talk about for the show in any way was the world building. So, hold on a sec here. I gotta take another drink of water. Again, everyone, keep yourselves well hydrated. And I've also got a fat cat right here who is aggressively nuzzling my knee. Oh, you're so cute, honey. You're so cute. And you're distracting me by nuzzling and tickling my knee. All right. So, for the world building, there is a lot going on here. We already know from Dana's run with the Owl House that Dana likes to get deep with her story. She likes to get involved with class differences, depending on the story, with racial differences. She likes to set up dark secrets that are there in the background for you to uncover if you're really paying attention to the story. She likes to get big with organizations, with magic, with history. And as someone who loves epic fantasy, I'm all for that. I love depth in a story. Now the question is though, now the question is, uh, how good though is this complicated world building that's been introduced in this pilot? You don't need to tell us everything about your world, and neither should you when you're first starting out. But it needs to make sense that people can then follow this world and understand it well enough that they can make sense of it. TV Count says, "How big are cats in the U.S.?" I mean, it all depends. I've got a little tabby Daisy who's actually far smaller than her age would imply. She looks like she just got out of her kitten phase, and I've had her now for over 3 years. She's not a kitten anymore, but she still looks about the size of a kitten. She's just a very small cat. Honey, on the other hand, this cat is huge. She is a large tortoiseshell cat. And we like to joke that she weighs about the same as a sack of potatoes because she is a heavy, heavy kitty. We got her from a household where she was unfortunately abused in. And so when we got her, she just took to eating and ballooned in size. And we've been trying to help her not gain too much more weight, try to lose that weight. Not very successfully because Honey is Honey. It is the way that she is, unfortunately. But so she's a rather large cat. She's not a Maine Coon. She's definitely smaller than a Maine Coon, but she's got the weight that she could probably flatten a Maine Coon. Thanks for the question there, TV account. Okay, so to start off, in terms of kind of the wonky world building, so we know thanks to dialogue from Addie that there's multiple worlds out there that are being terraformed and turned into theme parks. Okay. Now then, how can you sustain that? I really like the idea of one planet just being overused and overdrawn and destroyed by being converted into a theme park. I really, really like that idea. But beyond that, by saying that multiple planets are being terraformed into theme parks, that gets a little bit silly. It's kind of along the same lines as Avatar, with the giant blue cat aliens, where the unobtainium, which is it's just silly, this hyperconductor floating rock. Ooh my, ooh la la. The people spend $10 million a kilo just to have it. And like, oh, James Cameron, you do realize that a kilo actually isn't that heavy, right? And $10 million for a 1 kilo floating hypermagnetic rock makes no sense. The same as it makes no sense that there's brain fluids from an alien whale that makes people immortal when they drink it. And so then why is it then that people keep on harvesting these whale brain fluids when you only need one drink to become immortal effectively, but only like 1/100 of 1% of the human population can afford the immortal brain fluids? It's like, James Cameron, you were not thinking when you came up with this. I get it. It's the allegory. It's how the very rich people exploit nature and colonize other places and take advantage of people to hoard massive amounts of wealth. We get it. But honestly, that makes no sense for world building because it has no logic to stand on. George R.R. Martin, when you've got a medieval world where people are throwing around millions of gold coins, that means your gold is worth pennies. How on earth is your economy functioning? And for a guy who's all like, well, what's Aragorn's tax policy? You see, as a writer of epic fantasy myself, I really feel like you should make sense of the economy. George R. R. Martin has no understanding of how an economy works. And so terraforming multiple planets to turn them into theme parks doesn't make any sense, because where on earth is the money coming from? And if you're strip mining the planet for resources to build a theme park, where are you getting the customers then to make that investment worth it? It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It's a cool premise, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That's something to consider as a writer, where you might have some really, really neat world building ideas. And I personally am all for the extravagant, the wild, the over the top stuff. I personally like that. But it needs to still make sense within the world that you have established. And for this theme park world, for Park Planet or whatever, I can understand if this is a theme park world where people from all over the galaxy, as humankind has expanded out into the cosmos, comes here, wastes their money, consumerism goes overboard, and this planet has been strip mined, and all the junk, it just gets thrown over into the ocean, and no one pays any attention to it because all of the festivities are literally floating over the ocean, so no one has to smell how rank and awful it is. Okay, I get that. And that's not a bad idea for one planet. But the moment you start making more of these planets, there's no way that the system can sustain itself. And for a story like Knights of Guinevere that makes a point of class distinctions, of money, of how people are taken advantage of, lack of resources, and all this stuff, the moment that you start utilizing those elements of your story, you need to make sense then of how it all fits together. And you cannot make this a sustainable system for even one generation if all new planets are terraformed and strip mined in order to create more theme parks. Where are the people going to get the money to go and to go and enjoy this? Everyone that we've met thus far and that we've seen on the periphery or up close on Park Planet are all dregs. And so unless there's like a handful of super rich planets that people are coming from over there to then spend money at Park Planet, it doesn't work. It just, unfortunately, the logic that Dana's trying to have fun with does not work. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not enjoyable to watch. But the problem is that the problem then is that the moment that you start thinking critically about the story, not because you want to tear it apart, but because you want to understand it, that is then when all of the fallacies and nonsense begin cropping up. And this is one of the reasons why there's so many people who are scared of world building, because they feel like they need to make every single little thing make sense. You don't have to, and you don't have to explain every single little thing in your story. But you need to be cognizant of what elements you are using and understand how they all come together in order to make a fully functioning world. And so, like, for instance, to give an example again from one of my stories, as I've been working on the world of Draconia and how a planet should work where dragons rule the world, where they have a monopoly on magic, where they control most of the wealth, where they have their own social system that they impose upon everyone else. A society built by dragons for dragons does not accommodate humans. But there's plenty of humans on this world. So how do humans then fit in? And it's effectively then up to me to answer all the questions that come with that and to make sense of it within the context of this world. And so like, that's what you've got to think about. I do not need to go into great detail about what dragons do with all their waste, unless I want to. Instead, I need to focus on the more important things that allow this world to function. Now, that if I do answer what happens with all the dragon waste, and I answer it in a fun, interesting way that makes sense within the world, then all the better. The more depth, the more interest. But you got to focus on what's right for the characters and what makes the world that they interact with make sense. So and that then brings us to actually the smuggling ring that Frankie is kind of on the periphery of, where her boss dredges up all this junk and then resells it. Okay, then. So while this is very interesting, why do the people who are producing all the junk need to buy their junk back? It's a cool notion, but it's one that doesn't make a whole lot of sense once you start thinking about it. Again, it works well for the allegory of how Disney is always trying to control everything that has any slight connection to it. Even its garbage, Disney will not allow to be shared with anyone else. And so and so the world building fits the allegory, but it's world building that, again, the moment that someone tries to think critically about it, and it's like, okay, so how does this world make sense? You suddenly start realizing it doesn't make sense. And this is one of the issues that I'm afraid Knights of Guinevere will have going forward, trying to make sense then of this junkyard world and how it still even functions. The clear message about environmentalism, how when people do not take care of the world, in turn nature turns against us, and you see people dying of blue lung, which is the disease that's afflicting a lot of the people throughout this story. So okay, I get that. That'll be interesting to see. But okay, so what else is all going on within this theme park world? It feels like we've already gotten to all of the important places that will be available to the main characters. The overworld, the underworld, which is the water area, and then the labs in between. We've now been to all three major places, but we haven't really gotten to know them very well. And so it's interesting because it superficially feels very deep, but the moment you try digging in with at least this first episode, you then realize we don't actually have a whole lot to go off of. Compare this, and like if you're all like, well, Lars, it's just the first episode. Don't get your panties in a bunch, man. Think about this. Murder Drones episode 1 with a similar runtime gives us at least what the worker drones think is the history of how Copper 9 became a desolate, nuclear blasted world. We've learned about the relationship between drones and humans and of the murder drones that have been introduced. We get hints already to Absolute Solver in episode 1. We have the relationships between N, V, J, and the new budding relationship between N and Uzi. We have Uzi's relationship with her dad and with her classmates and how she feels so ostracized inside the colony. Oh, the colony exists underground to avoid the murder drones, and they've got these beautiful doors. We get to even see some of the mechanics of the doors and all this stuff. There is so much that, and then of course the drones have school. Apparently, we also get to see the assembly of little baby drones. So there is so much world building that is dropped on us in episode 1 of Murder Drones, that when Murder Drones first aired, there was so much to talk about, and it just kept growing from there. The Amazing Digital Circus is far more confined, but the Amazing Digital Circus still gave us a whole lot to think on that made sense within the context of its story. When we look at Knights of Guinevere, it's also throwing a lot at us, but it feels very disconnected and disjointed. And that's honestly okay by me. But it might, again, be something that prevents people from really clicking with this story. And it then means that Dana and crew have to work harder to bring all of these disconnected pieces together to help paint a very clear picture of what this world is and what's going on there. And so that's the difficulty with world building, making sense of things within the context and reason of your own world, of the story that you're trying to tell. of not going too overboard with all the details, but making sure the details that you do utilize make sense. And then if you've got so much more to show, that you then bring everything in appropriately at the right time to paint the larger picture. And so honestly, I think that Dana has made her work even harder with how she has done her first episode. It is not as solid in terms of our understanding of the world, of the plot, or the characters as we got with the Owl House. The Owl House ended up being a far stronger introduction to a story. And that's honestly the way that it is. Again, that is not a dig against this show, and I've got high hopes for Knights of Guinevere. I really, really want it to succeed. I personally like the show. I'm ready to see more, but I can also tell you that this is a shaky start to a series, and not because it's a bad story, but because Dana did not necessarily put in all the work just yet that would allow this to be a true standalone chapter within the story that will pull loads of people in. So Diagon says it's a resource thing. In my country, we buy waste for the precious metals, sometimes without proper protection and safety protocol. Yikes. But yes. Yeah, saying some places you definitely gather up the scraps, stuff that other people have shipped. Like for instance, too many Americans do not know this about their own country, but the United States ships its waste to other countries to process. So a lot of the recycling, for instance, that America claims to do is not actually done by Americans or by American companies. It gets shipped, for instance, over to China to be recycled and turned into new stuff. And so yeah, there's that's some cool real world building right there. How prosperous countries just throw away their stuff for others to pick up. It's like, and that's the thing, is that what Frankie and co are doing is not unreasonable. It's a cool idea. It's just that it's in this case, very cannibalistic is probably the best word I could use for it, where the scraps are being created by the exact same people who will then consume those scraps. They're being sold to them by thieves and smugglers. So like, we're making a profit. And I'm like, wait a second, why do you need to buy your own scraps when you could just take those scraps and continue to use them? What's going on here? And again, if it's more the allegory of how Disney operates rather than any real world operation where, again, a place like America, over consumerist, ships off its waste to other countries to deal with. In this case, it's the hyper consumerists shipping their own waste to themselves to deal with. Huh. Okay. Now then, there is one world building element to the story that I think is amazing. And I actually really, really like it. And I'm interested to see how many other people talk about it. And it is that all the Guineveres are connected. And so you have this network of Guineveres where every Guinevere robot can have its own unique relationship with the people that it interacts with, because it has all the knowledge from any other Guinevere that you have come into contact with and have spent time with, allowing the park to always maintain a special personal relationship with the people who have come there. That is such a cool idea. It's cool for entertainment, and it's cool in a really horrific sense, because that means that this park can gather all kinds of information on people, store it away. They know so much about every single person that comes there. It's basically like the ultimate surveillance system. And it's one that you unwittingly just bought your way into for some entertainment. And oh wow, just the implications behind that are incredible. It's such a cool idea because it's something that a theme park like Disneyland would absolutely want to use. And it's one that would basically be like the ultimate dream of any surveillance company. And so, or spy agency. So it's such a cool idea because it's one that people would absolutely buy into. And it's also so perfectly dystopian at the same time. Oh boy. Tegan says she had a 0 on her chest for a reason. Yeah, no, this Guinevere, yeah, this is the one, this is presumably the one that we're dealing with is the OG, the original Guinevere. And I'm excited to see what her history is, and we get to see her also be very expressive for a robot. The part where she goes up against the Sentinel, against the Knight, and as she turns to look back at the girls, we get this crazed, insane expression on this robot's face before we then jump on over to the robotic dream hallucination of seeing the prim and proper Guinevere. Yeah, there's something going on here with this robot. Oof. And we know that she remembers her interaction with the girls, which was then had very likely through one of the Guinevere clones. So this probably means that the original Guinevere that they have on their hands has got connections to all kinds of people and knows all kinds of stuff. They just have to be able to access it. And the question is, will they be able to access it properly? Because she seems like a deranged robot. And it's very likely that whenever we jump to the Guinevere visions, that this is either a coping mechanism for the mind that is Guinevere, or it is part of her programming, which could absolutely get in the way. Deacon says, did not expect her to body that thing. I know. Oh, it's a cool, like, I'm really looking forward to seeing where we go with that to help make sense of the fact that she just took out this massive robot that could pick up a building and chuck it like Stitch. This also should make us question, what are we talking about when we think Knights of Guinevere? And I think in this case, it's not going to be that Addie and Frankie have to save Guinevere, because it's very clear that Guinevere is very capable on her own. But rather that there needs to be people there who are willing to listen and help Guinevere become who she wants to be, or to escape what she wants to escape. Power alone is not enough to get out of the situation. We've already seen that no matter how many times she escapes, she always gets brought back. And so that means then that there's something else that these girls can bring to Guinevere that will allow her to finally be free to escape. And that's why they are her knights. But also, even though Dana says we should not think too much into the original Arthurian legends and who Guinevere actually was within the story to draw understanding and inspiration for Guinevere in this show. One thing, though, that I can bring up that I feel is applicable is that the chivalric code, such as it was from kingdom to kingdom, from court to court, wasn't just about, that the knights serve the liege lord and liege lady, but that the princess or the queen or the king or the prince also bestowed protection on and favors to those knights, to the people who dedicated themselves to the royal crown. If you dedicate yourself to me, you protect me, you lend me your strength and your money when I need it, I in return will give you what you are looking for. And it's very clear that Addie and Frankie have got big dreams for themselves, or at least they're trying to survive. They have their own aspirations and goals that Guinevere could possibly make happen. And so there will be this exchange between them, of the girls lending to Gwen what she needs in order to fully be free, and Guinevere in return then giving the girls what they need to be free in this world. Tian says, I think our Gwen is the prime Gwen, like the hub of the system. Yeah, that could very well be the case. The interesting thing is just how often she's been worked on to get it just right. And if I have any plausible theory for why this girl's been working on Gwen for so long, I think it's because she's trying to create that perfect mother figure, this perfect dream, this perfect memory. And the problem is that it's never quite worked out. And that what's then been chased this whole time has been a dream, rather than coming to understand who Gwen actually is. I think that's what we're going to discover going forward with the story. So that all being said, everyone, yeah, that's pretty much what I had what I planned to talk about. And it is now almost, well, or it's not yet almost 11 o'clock, but it's getting pretty late where I am at, and I can kind of feel my voice going. Now, I know this hasn't been a very long stream in terms of some of the other streams that we've done, but I think it will be good to call it here, unless you guys have any sort of questions or that you wish to ask, any theories that you want to share already, or insights, comments, stuff that I might have missed, because I always find that you guys bring some clarity or some perspective that I wouldn't have gotten to on my own, and that always helps me out a whole lot in understanding things. So I'll give you guys a moment to bring up any of that. Otherwise, we will wind it down from here. And it gives me another chance to take a drink of water. Good drink. All righty. Let me actually Let's bring ourselves here closer to the end. So I think there's some cool stuff here real quick to have a look at. T-Ken says, I'm not surprised the timeline for this was 100 years ago and later. LOL. Yeah, no, the time skips are something. They absolutely are. Let's round off the night by having a look at what was one of my personal favorite scenes. It's not my personal, if not the favorite scene that I have from this episode. Taking on the knights. Again, I just have to think of that giant knight / sentinel guy as one of the fire golems from the Shadowlands DLC for Elden Ring. Just totally the vibes I'm getting. Especially that's how long Disney has been running. TV count, I had not made that connection. Thank you for pointing that out. So should the pilot for a show just be a showing of what happens in the plot, as in the broad strokes? That depends a lot on the story there, I'm Omega. So let's actually then draw a comparison. So the pilot for Gravity Falls. Gravity Falls' pilot shows us Dipper and Mabel coming to Gravity Falls. The place is weird. Grunkle Stan is a con man. Seuss is the funny handyman who's around the place. And Dipper is convinced that there's something weird going on there and thinks that Mabel might be dating a zombie. especially after finding this book that says that's got secrets of Gravity Falls and that he shouldn't trust anyone. And then it quickly devolves into shenanigans with gnomes trying to marry his twin sister. They beat the gnomes. Grunkle Stan doesn't believe that they had any of these crazy run-ins, but then we get to see that Grunkle Stan has a secret hidden behind the vending machine. Okay, so what did that pilot then do for us? It established that that Gravity Falls is full of weirdness. Dipper's got his hands on a book that will allow him to try to figure out the secrets of this place. We got the relationship between Dipper and Mabel as twins, their relationship to Grunkle Stan, and a little bit with Seuss. And we got some fun shenaniganery that shows us that the show is going to be funny, it's going to have mysteries, and will have some darker undertones. Woohoo. It did not tell us anything about Bill. It did not give us anything about Grunkle Stan's brother. It did not even begin to get into the awkward relationship between Dipper and Wendy, or a lot of the other characters. We didn't get any introduction to Gideon yet, and so there's so much about the story that we haven't even gotten yet too. And as you know, if you've watched all of Gravity Falls, there's so much great world building that happens. It's such an expansive, in-depth story. So what exactly then did the pilot for Gravity Falls do? It did what any good first chapter to a book is supposed to do. It allows us to immediately get to know one of the main characters. It needs to establish the atmosphere of the book. How is the story going to be overall? For Gravity Falls, it's going to be funny, it's going to be mysterious, with some darker undertones. Here's your main characters. You now know who your main characters are, and you know that the basic plot going forward is going to be solving the mysteries of this place. All right. Let's then compare it to Amphibia. Very, very different story. Portal fantasy story of a girl who ends up with her 3 friends on this world that's populated with frogs, with anthropomorphic frogs, newts, and toads. And what is it that the pilot lets us know? It actually doesn't dive into the central theme of friendship in the first episode, but rather we get to know Sprig and Anne. We get to know Sprig's relationship with the people in his village, and especially with Polly and with Hop Hop, and the budding relationship that he begins to form with Anne. And we get a sense of how this show is going to be adventurous, heavy on the humor, but surrounded by the macabre. I am surprised that Disney let Matt Brawley get away with how much dark material as he did, because Amphibia is so macabre. It is so gory, gritty, in your face, weird, that you're just like, wait, what? This isn't a kid show? And we don't yet know, and we are given a hint at the very end of the first episode about the music box, and that the music box has brought Anne and at least one friend, if not more friends, to this world, and that she's separated from them. So we've got a mystery. We've got a basic hint at the plot that's supposed to unfold. It has firmly established the atmosphere, and it has firmly established 2 of our main characters. Fantastic. The pilot of a good pilot for any show establishes at least one of the main characters. It establishes the atmosphere for the story going forward, what the feel is going to be, things that we can expect, and it gives us a hint at the main plot that is to come. So what has this opening for Knights of Guinevere done? It has given us insights into Frankie and Addie. Frankie definitely feels like the more fleshed out of the 2, which I think is one of the reasons why I, as a viewer, end up empathizing more with Frankie than I do with Addie. because we just got more Frankie overall. Okay, so we've got our characters. The atmosphere is absolutely established with the grittiness, with the darkness, the very grit, the gallows humor that is displayed from time to time, the whiplash, the tonal whiplash between this beautiful park world and just its disgusting rotting guts and everything that's happening underneath. So the atmosphere has been absolutely well established. For the plot, the interesting thing about the plot is that what's been introduced to us, we already know, thanks to these characters, that what we've been told of the plot will basically be thrown out the window really quickly. It's not just, oh, we got to bring Guinevere back online. Rather, instead, it's once we bring Guinevere totally back online, how on earth is that then going to shape everything about us and what we do going forward? So we're kind of left in the dark about what to expect. All that we know is that again, this is where the timelines aspect comes into play, because it's a promise of there are mysteries of the past that must be solved. By solving them, they make sense of the present in order for these characters to better define their future. Okay, that's enough that we can work with. But here's the thing, is that of the three things that this pilot needed to do, firmly establish at least one of the main characters, establish the atmosphere for the overall story, and give us an idea of the plot ahead, the show, depending on how you feel as a viewer, you might not feel all that connected with the main characters. You might not know these main characters well enough to really get involved in their story yet. The atmosphere has absolutely been nailed down, so it succeeded there. So iffy on one, absolutely for the second. For the third, we already know that it's not going to necessarily be what's been set up for us right now. So as a result, it's also kind of iffy on, well, what the heck is the plot? Other than that, we know that there's mysteries that need to be solved. And that they need to somehow rectify or address the horribleness that is in this world. So with that in mind, again, it's a fun start. It's a fun start to the show. It has been well made for the most part. But the writing has kind of this iffiness to it, this sense of shakiness. And so as a result of that, it's hard to fully buy into what Knights of Guinevere wants to sell. At least that's how it feels to me as a writer. And so I find myself in a situation where I'm like, okay, dude, I really love the premise. I like this first chapter. I want more, but I already have some concerns. And that is not where you as the creator want to be. If the audience is already feeling some concern for the story going forward after the first chapter, after the first episode, you need to make sure that the rest of your story hits it out of the ballpark. Otherwise, people might start losing trust in your story and might pull back. So I hope that answers your question there, I'm Omega. All right. Like I said, we will round it off with, if you guys have any more questions or comments that you wish to throw on out there as we watch again, as we return again to my favorite scene of the episode, please by all means share.
You gotta save the princess. Get up, or you're all gonna die.
How wonderful. Get up or you're all gonna die. The tentacles. Yes, we've got a robot here who can utilize her guts like strong tentacles. And here we have the hallucination.
Little ones. Are you lost?
Okay, so something that does need to be pointed out. We know that Guinevere can read people's minds to a certain extent because she was able, just by looking at the girls, to identify them and just start already figuring out how to best interact with them. Who knows if she's able to truly read minds or if she's just very good at reading people. But this moment right here is left suspect. Is this a projection of Guinevere to interact with Frankie, or is this Frankie losing her marbles? We don't know. It's an interesting, intriguing question, and one that actually lends strength to the episode, because like, wait, what's going on here? That's a cool shot.
Is that your parent or guardian?
Yes, that would be my uncle.
Well, you've been such a good friend to me. Allow me to sort this out for you. Frankie! Come on!
And it's right there where I think that this is more of a hallucination rather than a projection of Guinevere. Is that moment when Addie pulls back on Frankie, who is on her feet rather than lying down on the ground as she was in that vision.
We have to get to the elevator.
That crazy grin.
She helped us. We have to help her. How?
We have to help her. How? Yeah. We are up against a giant golem that can pick up a building and chuck it. We are small, squishy humans. Ain't no way we're helping against that. Blood. And not just blue blood. We got good red gore seeping on through. There she goes down. And you got that mangled corpse left behind. Yeah, what on earth was going on there? Busted up, wounded, exhausted. Come to the end of the episode right here with them going to try to bring Guinevere 100% back online. Restore her with the wonderful powers of Disney magic. Or as they call it, the halo. Now that's some creepy stuff. Error, caution, warning, hello, and reboots.
Hello, Francesca. Hello, Andrea. It's nice to see you two again.
And as I've already seen suggested by some people, that the way that this episode ends is an indication that going forward in the story, that we're going to see that Guinevere that Guinevere cannot differentiate between the fantasy setting that's been programmed into her and the reality that she's surrounded by. If that's the case, I think that'd be really, really cool. To have that dichotomy, the juxtaposition between the fantasy and the reality. Which again, good allegory for Disney. There's the fantasy of what Disney is versus the reality of what Disney is. And I love this image right here. This is a good ending image. And there we go. That is the end of the episode. So everyone, those are my first day thoughts and insights into Knights of Guinevere episode 1. I'm looking forward to finding out how this series does, how this pilot does overall. If it does very well in terms of not just views but also of merchandise sold, I expect that we will get to hear about the green lighting of the whole series by the end of October. My guess would be, if it does really well, if it brings in like Murder Drones numbers in terms of views and merchandise sales, we'll probably hear about the series getting picked up for a full season. I would say around October 25th would be my guess. If it doesn't do that well, if it doesn't get enough views to bring in a decent amount of money, and it doesn't sell enough merchandise, then either the show will not get picked up for a full season, or kind of like with the Gaslight District, we'll be waiting anywhere between 2 to 3 months to get confirmation of the whole series. So that's just something to keep an eye out for. Say, just because Glitch really does want to make the show happen, they are a business. They need to make sure that what they do is sustainable. And as they've talked about before, all their shows are funded 20% from ad revenue, 80% from merchandise sales. And the Gaslight District did not get greenlit for a full season until it met that threshold. As I talked about in one of my most recent videos, they had over 18 million views. Very likely we're reaping $3,000 per million views. And so when you multiply that out, or actually I think I said $4,000, when you then multiply 4,000 by 18, you're looking at $72,000. That's nice. I would love to have $72,000, but you can't make the next episode of an animated show like that on just $72,000. So they needed to make up about $200,000 plus in merchandise sales. So it was only thanks to the sale of enough merch, Gaslight District merch, that they were able to confidently move forward with the next episode. And the Amazing Digital Circus, because it is doing so well, can easily make up a lot of the difference. But I think that Luke and Kevin are smart enough to realize that they can't just rely on the Amazing Digital Circus forever to help fund them going forward, even though, yeah, they've made a lot of money with it. Absolutely a lot of money. Just the ad revenue alone from the pilot for the Amazing Digital Circus is enough to pay for the first episodes of both the Gaslight District and Knights of Guinevere. But again, they need to make sure that what they're doing is sustainable. So if you want to see more Knights of Guinevere, and you have the ability to buy some of the merch that Glitch is offering, then that's what you got to do, because it will be the merch that will allow this show to continue on. So if you want to see more of these characters, if you want answers to the mysteries and everything, that's what you got to do. And no, I am not paid by Glitch to say that. That is just the honest assessment of what their business model is and how they make their decisions. So there's the answer right there. And I will have to get working on a more proper, not so rambly review of this show. Don't know when I'll be able to do that, but that is now on my agenda. So everyone, with that being said, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being patient with me. Those of you who waited for me to arrive. Again, I do apologize for this stream being so late. I blame it on my own stupidity for deciding to play Settlers of Catan at a game night. I had loads of fun playing Settlers of Catan, but that ate up way more time than I was expecting, and that is why this live stream was so late. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me on this fun adventure that we call writing. And until the next video, y'all, tschüss.